knowing what to ask in the interviews because they need you more than you need them. You have
100%.
a plethora of options. You can go anywhere you want. And you need to know which questions to ask them in the interview because this is your opportunity to ask about the job and see if it's the right fit for you. So I came up with a list of questions that I usually like to ask, and I'll quickly run through them for you guys.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Physio Diaries podcast. We are your co-hosts, Dr. Melanie Ziaziris
and Dr. Alice Goshevatsky, where students, healthcare professionals, and wellness junkies come to get the inside scoop of the healthcare and wellness industry.
The podcast you didn't know you needed by your favorite travel physical therapist.
Hello, physio friends. We want to thank you all for tuning in, listening to our podcast, and engaging with us on social media. We absolutely love getting your messages. We've gotten so many messages just in general, but specifically relating to travel jobs and many different professions, not just PT. Because we've been getting so many questions, we have just wanted to really dial in on travel jobs again. Our second episode was going over internal versus external, specifically for physical therapy. But today we're going to talk about a little bit of everything and answer your questions and go over kind of essentials to being a travel healthcare worker. But before we get into it, we want to ask you for a big favor because we have put so much effort, you guys don't even know, into this podcast. And we really are just trying to grow it and nurture it and everything. So we would really appreciate if you would rate our podcast after listening, preferably 5 stars because we're 5-star girlies. But yes,
I love that.
Any rating, any review really helps us out. So please and thank you. Let's get into travel jobs for PT, PTA, OT, COTA, SLP, and nursing.
You name it.
So first, we'll go over the difference between internal versus external jobs. And this is specifically for physical therapy assistants, occupational therapy assistants, because I'm not really sure what the SLP internal route is like, or if they have one. I'm not as familiar with that. The biggest difference between internal versus external is with internal, you're just sticking with one company and just going to that company's clinics. For example, the company I'm with, I'm an internal traveler. So I stick with the same company and they're in 24 different states. So I have the option to go to multiple states through them, but I'm sticking to the same company. Versus external, what Alice is doing, it's kind of more like contract work, like travel, like health contract work. And so you can kind of go around different companies, different recruiters. Yeah, you can kind of pick and choose. A lot more options, but
we basically have opportunities in all 50 states. And I feel like you have more options because you're not tied down to that specific company that needs to have a clinic at the place for you to go to.
Yes.
So that's the main difference, I would say. But besides that, you're still, traveling and you still do contracts, right? Your contract is going to be over in a couple weeks and then you're going to go somewhere else.
Yes.
So
yeah, it's just formatted a bit different. The pay is a little bit different. For me, I've been with the same company now in June, it'll be year 2. And I don't have to reapply for jobs. I don't apply for contracts. I just get them. So that's a big difference versus Alice, she has to reapply to jobs and contracts every time. But for me, just you go straight through, you just talk to your travel manager, get the options, get the list, and tell them where you want to go. But our second episode really got into detail about the difference for everything, pay, documentation, recruiters, all the things. So if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty details of internal versus external, go listen to episode 2.
Because a lot of people have a lot of questions about this and there's not a lot of information online, and it's really helpful that each of us has had the 2 different experiences and we can talk about the differences and what we like and we don't like as well. So if you guys ever have any questions, if you're interested in travel as a healthcare worker, let us know and we'd love to get you started and help you out. But like you said, one big thing about internal travel for you is that they already know you're already in the system and they just know you're a good person and they're gonna sign you on the contract. But for me, I always do an interview, right? And I know that for some people, interviews are super stressful and scary, but they are not legitimate, like, interviews where they ask you questions most of the time. Usually they really, really need people, and they will be basically like, okay, so like, we're so excited that you guys are interested, and, tell us about the job, because they already have your resume. They already know all your experience, and they know your license. And so they basically, I would say 90% of the time, don't even really ask us that many questions. Basically, when can you start? Do you have your license for the state that you're going to be practicing in? And do you think you would be willing to extend your contract?
Yeah.
So the big thing for you, if you do external healthcare travel, I would say, is knowing what to ask in the interviews, because they need you more than you need them. You have a
100%.
plethora of options. You can go anywhere you want. And you need to know which questions to ask them in the interview, because this is your opportunity to not negotiate salary. You don't negotiate within the interview, but it's your opportunity to ask about the job and see if it's the right fit for you. So I came up with a list of questions that I usually like to ask, and I'll quickly run through them for you guys, especially if you're new grads. I didn't know that I should be asking these things. So you want to know what you're signing yourself up for the next 3+ months. So usually when they open the floor for me, I always ask, this is huge, is what is the average patient caseload at your clinic? Or what are the productivity expectations? So productivity expectations are more for like a skilled nursing facility. They'll say like 90% or something. And so that means like, if you're working 8 hours of the day, like 90% of the time, they expect you to be patient facing and like working with a patient. And some places, if they say like 90 plus, a lot, you're going to get burnt out. Like you're going to be really busy. You're going to be expected to see like group therapy sessions where you're treating multiple patients at a time. So be careful with skilled nursing facilities that expect you to have 90+% productivity.
But
And
I just want to say, for like other settings too, though, because like
yes.
we have them and whatnot, but it's based on visits, not like percentage.
Okay.
I mean, I guess it can be similar, but like for me as an
Mhm.
internal therapist, like we have a certain number that we're supposed to hit a day. So like 12
Oh,
visits a
really?
day is the standard. Yeah. But like
Wow.
for the week, it's 60 visits. And so just
Okay.
depending on what your schedule is, like 4 10s would be 15 a day. So
Mhm.
yeah, it can also be on visits too.
But then,
But they'll
like,
always have some type of
cancels.
expectation for you. And then you'll
Yeah.
cancel. So like they'll
Yeah.
always overschedule because there'll be cancels. At least for me, because I don't do one-on-one
Mm,
contracts. And that's
got
also
it.
a big difference between internal and external. Like you have the option to say, I don't want to go there because I only want to do one-on-one contracts. Versus for me, that's not a thing with my company. Like we don't do
Yes.
one-on-one
Yeah.
like for
No.
everyone, and you can't
No.
like say, oh, I'm just gonna do a one-on-one
They're gonna
contract.
be like, all right, well, why did we hire
Right.
you? Yeah, so
You're gonna
that's
say,
the
"I don't care."
thing. Yes, that's the thing that I like, is especially out west, there's a lot of one-on-one jobs, and that's the reason I haven't
Yeah.
burnt out yet. Like, I know a lot of our classmates, like, I'm sure burnt out, the ones that are working at like mills
I
and
mean,
stuff,
yeah, so many
is
people have
because
left or ready to go to cash-based.
I know, like we talked about. I think that that's what I really like, is like you are able to be really, really picky about which jobs you take. You're not tied down to like a certain clinic if you don't really like them anymore or don't like how they practice or what they do. But also, yeah, we don't have any productivity expectations. I could be scheduled up to 15 patients, but I'm not expected to see a certain amount. Like, they can't say, because they'll try to fill my schedule, but there's always cancels and there's always no shows or reschedules. So they can't really give us productivity expectations as travelers, I guess, especially because we're switching so often that they can't expect us to see like a certain amount of patients if we don't have a set caseload yet.
Yeah.
But anyways,
Well,
that's like
yeah.
a
Well,
big
that's
thing that
like
I would
a
ask.
big, yeah, I was gonna say,
Yes.
but even with us too, like that's very different even in our world with PT, like our companies, because they're like I do have those productivity expectations. But
Yes.
that is definitely key, like in the interview process, no matter what company you're looking with, is knowing
Mm-hmm.
what their productivity expectations are, if they even have them. You would not believe how many businesses say they don't do this, and then once you're there, do it.
Yes.
So research, talk to people in that industry, talk to people with that company, because companies be lying too.
I know. And that's the thing too, is like anything that they say in the interview or they promise to you, you have to make sure it is in your contract. Because
Yeah.
if it's not in the contract, if it's not signed, then it's not
Yeah.
official.
Nope. Anything
So
goes.
yeah, anything can go. If you need specific days off that you know ahead of time, you need to put that in the
Yeah.
contract. Make sure that those are there if you have your schedule. Usually the nice thing about, and that's, I was going to get into that, but the nice thing about external travel PT is I've always had a 410 schedule. And as a clinician, I really appreciate having 3 days off in my week.
Yeah.
Anyways, the next question that I always ask about is patient population. Is it
Yes.
going to be orthopedic? Is it going to be neuro? Is there going to be pediatric patients involved? What's the youngest patient that I would see? What's the oldest? What is the like typical age group? So you just want to know
Yeah.
what you're getting yourself into, because some
Mhm.
clinics see a lot of post-op. If that's not your strong suit,
Yes.
or you like literally hate post-op, then there's a lot of clinics that you wouldn't work well with.
Or like all
So,
geriatric.
or all geriatric or all
I've definitely
sports.
seen that.
Maybe you don't
Yeah.
want to work with high school athletes. Like maybe that's not your jam.
Yeah.
So I always ask about patient population because that's a huge
Yeah.
one.
For sure, for sure. And since I'm not necessarily applying, like with internal, you will always have a meeting with your next travel manager, like the
Okay.
clinic manager and potentially the district, I guess, director and like manager of the
Mm-hmm.
managers. So we'll always do a meeting before to kind of go through all this stuff too. And like before I even say yes to the clinic, I try to get as much information as I can. And usually my travel manager is the one that like has all of these like patient population. What does the productivity look like? What's a typical schedule look like? Because some clinics
Mm-hmm.
will say 16 a day is typical. Others is like 10 to 12 a day is like typical. So all of these things we go through, like even for internal, are very much applicable.
Good. Yeah, that's good. I always ask about shifts and schedule. With travelers, they usually do 410s because they know that the people that are going to that area are trying to explore. And so having that extra day off is always really nice because we'll like use that as the day. Like Mondays right now, I use as my day to like, it's your get your shit together, Alice day. Like,
Yes.
and then Saturday, Sunday, I can actually use to like do stuff like this or like, enjoy, like go out and explore, because that's the whole
Yeah.
purpose of being a traveler. And so most places do 410s, which is nice, which means
Mm.
4 10-hour shifts instead of like 8 5s or 5
Yeah.
8s. Oh my gosh, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. I'm ending my 6th contract right now, and I have been able to do 410s only for 2 of them.
Okay.
Yeah, the other clinics didn't
Yeah.
let me, but I was able to kind of alter my schedule so I could do like a 4-hour day on Friday or something
Yeah.
less like that.
Which
I
is
got to do
still
that in 2
nice.
clinics. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
very nice, honestly. I really like doing like 8 to 6 and then 8 to 12 on Fridays. I
Mhm.
think that was my schedule.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely
Yeah.
still prefer that over like 5
Yeah.
8s.
Oh my god, yeah.
Anything but 5
Fuck a
8s.
5/8. Yeah.
In healthcare, it's like I'd rather
Yeah.
just stay a couple hours later every
Yeah.
day and then like not have to show up to work for one of those days
Yes.
because I already did
Yes.
long days. Um,
Wait, when you get to the interview process, were you ever like turned away or told like you didn't get the job?
Yeah, so there was one, it was a job in Colorado that was like double, triple booking patients.
Oh,
And like I always try to be honest with them. I tell
yeah.
them I have like almost 2 years of experience, and I told them I was preferring contracts that were one-on-one.
Yeah.
I didn't want to see multiple patients at a time or hand my patients off to tech. I just wanted
Yeah.
to be honest.
Yeah.
And I just don't want to set myself up for failure or
For
be
sure.
really frustrated with the clinic that I'm at,
Yeah.
because it's just not my way that I like to treat. And I basically told them in the interview that, and it was really nice because they really were honest and they said, you know what, I don't know if this is going to be a good fit because we do expect you to see 2 to 3 patients like at a
Yeah.
time. And I didn't like that. So,
Mhm.
they basically turned us away, but I also turned them away.
Yeah.
And it sucked because I
Totally.
was like, I really, really want to go to Colorado. That's like high on my list. And that's how I ended up in Washington, was because I knew this company that I'm working for now was one-on-one and heard great things. Also, I was really surprised that I got the Monterey job because that was actually a full-on interview. They asked
Oh,
us
really?
really like hard questions. Like there was a lot of applicants and they really like were interviewing a lot of people.
Grilling people,
And
yeah.
we have the lower end of experience right now compared to other people. But they asked us like, where do you see yourself in the next, I hate that question, next like 1 to 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. This one threw me off guard so much was, what would you bring to the table that somebody else couldn't? And put that really like put me on the spot
That's
for
a
some
good
reason.
one.
I know. So be prepared sometimes to have like legit interviews, but like I said, first time I had a legit interview was this job. Usually it's
Oh,
more like, this is our company and when can you start? Like I said.
yeah. Yeah. No, those are really interesting questions. I don't really interview anymore because of I'm internal, but like if I was external for any profession, like you're vetting them at the same time too. So like think of an
100%.
interview of like you're vetting them, and like you said, you pretty much vetted them too. Like if they were gonna try to make you double triple, like no, check next. So that's like key.
Yes.
And that same question, you could totally turn around on them. Like if you're listening and like you want some good interview questions and like you're having an
Yes.
interview soon, but I always say it's good to ask them questions. You could say, what does this company offer that's different than other clinics or
Exactly.
whatever?
Yeah,
So,
and another big thing that you made me realize, especially if you're newer in the profession or traveling as a new grad, always ask them if there's any mentorship that they would offer to
yep.
travelers and any like continuing education. Because the
Yeah.
company I'm at now is really great about it. I went to an 8-hour course yesterday that they opened to travelers, which was really nice, and they waived the fee. So I was like, of course
Oh,
I'm going to
wow.
sign
That's
up.
nice.
They
Yeah.
prioritize perms, obviously, but
Yeah.
then they opened it to travelers, and I
That's really
immediately like
nice.
took the opportunity, and that's like not always an option for travelers at
Yeah.
like other companies because
Yes.
we're always on the
Totally.
bottom of the totem pole. So
That was
yeah.
honestly one of the there were a couple of reasons why I picked internal, but
Mhm.
since I'm with one company, we get all of the words. Oh my God, it's late.
Yeah.
All of the CEU perks, and that's one of the reasons why I ended up choosing internal, because I wanted a bunch of CEU options. I have done
Yes.
so many courses and I'm going to do dry needling with them. So like
Mhm.
you really just got to make a pros cons list and see what you want.
Yes. Yeah, and the thing is a lot of companies will cover it if you stay with
Yeah.
them for like a long period of
Long
time.
enough.
I just switch, but I also
Yeah.
like want the opportunity to make more money because like certain
Yeah.
companies you can get a lot more.
Totally.
And so I feel like they still will cover it. Like I've had coworkers that were travelers that got their dry needling covered, which was nice
Okay.
because
Yeah.
that's like not cheap. Because
Yeah.
they were staying with the company for like a year. They always give you MedBridge, which is nice because I have
Oh,
access to
okay.
MedBridge and I've done courses on there and they're actually really helpful. Moving on to your interview questions. I personally wouldn't want to be the only clinician there at the
Yeah.
clinic. So ask about if there's other clinicians because you'll ask them questions because, onboarding can be crazy. Also ask about what does your orientation period, onboarding, ramp up period look like as a traveler because it's usually very, very quick. I've had some clinics where I've done 30 evaluations in 1 week and I've had some where it was really, really chill the first week or two. Like I was seeing like a
Yeah.
couple patients a day. So ask about that. Ask about dress code because you might need to purchase new scrubs or maybe you can't wear joggers. Every clinic is different, so ask about
Yes.
that. Then also ask about if you're already thinking about it, if there's a possibility of extending the contract or if it's just going to be the 3 months that you sign on for. So those
Yeah.
are things that I usually bring up
Those
because
are
that
all
kind of
great.
covers everything I feel like.
Yeah. I don't really think about this too often because I know for me there's going to be other clinicians, but like knowing
Yes.
there's other people around, like
That's
especially
huge.
for like OT,
Mhm.
COTA, like SLP even. I don't know I'm not too familiar with like speech path and how travel looks like for them, but I know in
Mhm.
so many states I go to, it's so limited. So I can only imagine there's not too many other people in those clinics that
Mhm.
have it. And that's probably why they have a need. So yeah,
Yeah.
mentorship and all of that would be key things
It's
to like ask and
huge.
bring up. Yeah.
Yes. We got a lot of good questions and we
Yes.
wanted to address them. We've gotten so many good questions overall, but we just picked
Yes.
out the travel related ones because people are so interested in it.
Question number one. Hey, exclamation mark. Love the podcast. As current physical therapy student, this podcast has been super helpful. We are so glad. Thank you so much. Would love to know more about your experience with negotiating salary travel contracts, and if you have any tips or factors you always consider or ask about when choosing a travel contract. So we definitely answered a lot of like things we consider choosing the travel contract with the previous things we talked about. But in terms of negotiating salary, definitely different internal versus external. So I'll talk about mine. So with internal, since I'm with one company, I'm actually salaried and then I get a stipend, which the stipend is separate because that is non-taxable income. The stipend is pretty much a standardized amount for the state, is anywhere from like 1,800 to 2,500 a month. Again, depending on the state and the city. I think Cali might also be more now because they've updated in the past 2 years. So that pretty much stays within that range, depending on the cost of living in that state and city. In terms of the salary, when I first got on, I got a certain salary, and then every year, because you're a traveler, you actually get a 6% increase with my company. I'm not sure how other travel companies are, but it's based on the salary and not necessarily the contract. Regardless, every year you should be getting a salary no matter what. If you're listening to this and you don't, that's something you need to bring up to your manager and talk about because everyone deserves a salary increase every year. Yeah, I don't really negotiate. I just, at this point now, I've had one since I've only been with this company for a year and a half. And then in June, I should get that merit increase. So I don't really have to do too much negotiating. I definitely negotiated my contract at first, though. When I first got on, they gave me a certain amount, told them based on these factors, I think that I should get more pretty much. I definitely gave my reasoning as to why, like I plan to do pelvic floor and then I got certified and do pelvic floor. I am open to seeing pretty much all patient diagnoses and types in outpatient clinics. I just kind of hyped myself up and said that I wanted this amount of money. So I told them the actual amount and then they rebutted it and gave me a pretty good bump actually from the original pay. Yeah, because they originally said a certain amount for salary and a certain amount for sign-on. And then I rebutted a higher, I think I rebutted like 10K more for the salary. And then they gave me an increase in the salary, an increase in the sign-on bonus. So I got like 5,500 increase in total.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty good amount.
Definitely
So
negotiate. Yeah.
always negotiate.
Because they will be holding back a little bit because they
Yeah.
know that you will negotiate. And if you don't,
Yeah.
then you're just losing out on money that like you would have earned otherwise.
Right. Yeah. And I always say go higher because most likely they'll get something in the middle. So
Shoot for the stars. Yeah. I would say for external, there's a lot of room for negotiation, which is really nice. Because you are contracted and they really, really need you. Like these places that are putting out requests for travelers need you bad. The more they need you, the more likely they will to like give you more money. But also when you're negotiating, you are never negotiating with the clinic or the hospital or whoever you're working with. You're negotiating with your recruiter. Because
that's a good one. I didn't realize that.
So that's like never appropriate for, and that's what I didn't know as a new grad. It's not appropriate for you to talk about pay and stuff during the interview and during like talking with your boss or whatever. Yes. You always have to work through your recruiter. So basically there's a bill rate that the company offers and they submit that to your travel company or your recruiter. And then your recruiter, they keep a chunk, like the recruiting staffing agency keeps a chunk, and then the rest goes to you. So any money that you are not negotiating or you're not getting to yourself, that travel company is going to keep from you or your recruiter is going to get a chunk of it too. So you always want to negotiate, always max out so that you get meals and incidentals basically, and then you also get lodging every day. So there's a max per state of how much you can get. That should always be maxed out because that's untaxed. So for example, like I was looking at my California contract.
Yeah.
I'm getting basically $180 per day for housing and meals.
Combined.
So that would be combined, yes. So that'd be like $5,500 a month. So that's untaxed. So you always want to make sure that that is maxed out. And if it's not, you need to tell them that they should, because that's like untaxed. Like I said, anytime you're extending a contract, always ask for a little bit more, because it's easier for them to give you a little bit more money and keep you longer rather than lose you to a different company because you found a better job or something. So it's always easier to extend your contract. Everybody is happy when you extend your contract. Your recruiter is happy, your company is happy, you're happy because you don't have to get another job. So it's like in their benefit, honestly, to like at least give you $1 or $2 more an hour.
Yeah.
When it's usually pretty easy to get. Yeah, always negotiate. You are worth more than you think, and you always should advocate for yourself, because like there's money. There's money in healthcare, there's money in travel. You should always be negotiating, even if you're a new grad. Like, don't be afraid to do it. Just know how to do it correctly.
Yeah.
So
Has a recruiter ever said no to you when you tried to negotiate?
sometimes they have literally maxed out your pay. So they like are not allowed to give you more if they have already given you a raise or like given you
Gotcha.
more money. So sometimes it does happen, but you always need to ask. Okay, so next question. And we really haven't talked too much about housing, but people ask about it a lot. So in school and now as travel PTs, we both have used Furnish Finder, and we really, really like it. It is way more affordable. If you look on Airbnb or VRBO, it's so expensive. It's not
Yeah.
affordable. So
It's
we use
crazy, some of the
Furnish Finder.
things.
Yeah, it's insane. I'm like, how could anyone afford that? Furnish Finder is nice because it connects you directly with like the landlord, and they don't take a chunk. Furnish Finder doesn't. The prices are more affordable. Definitely look at the reviews, because most places have reviews from past travelers. It's supposed to only be for healthcare workers, and they'll usually ask for your contract to show that you are contracted in the area, and it's not like some randos just finding affordable like furnished housing, because it's really the point of it is to bring healthcare workers to their area. I've had nothing but good experiences with Furnish Finder,
Same.
you know, but also we haven't had roommates. You can rent
That's
a
true.
room on
I
Furnish
forgot about
Finder.
that.
Yeah, or you can have a whole place to yourself. Obviously, having a whole place to yourself is way more expensive.
Yeah. What I usually do whenever I'm like looking for a new place on Furnished Finder, I will like always set up an actual phone call or video call with the
For
landlord.
sure.
Um, yeah, I've definitely heard some stories on Furnished Finder from other people, like friend of a friend telling stories that like didn't have a great experience. I'm like, really? How? But I'm like, you just have to vet them, and like they're vetting you, you're vetting them, same thing. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely call, talk to them like over the phone. And then I think all of mine I have paid through Furnished Finder. So a lot of them,
Oh, really?
I think do you not
Okay.
pay through Furnished Finder?
No, through Zelle.
Oh. Oh,
Yeah.
really? I guess it just depends on the landlord then, because I think
Yes, it's
maybe
different.
one I paid Venmo, one, and then
Yeah.
the others, my last two I 100% did through Furnished Finder. So it makes it so easy and convenient. Like it's straight through the portal on the site. I also get rental insurance through the site. A lot of them require you to have rental insurance, and they'll give you that option. It's like an extra $20 a month. So it's like, whatever.
Do it. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, all of my landlords have been pretty great for the most part. Like I really have not had any issues. I usually talk to a couple different ones. I was
Yeah.
able to see some of the places in Georgia when I was there for my second contract, because I had to like move to a different part of Georgia. So I was able to go kind of check them out a bit. I always ask for like a video of
Oh,
walkthrough of
yeah.
the place, or like
Yes.
FaceTime and walk through if I can.
And what kind of gives me a little bit of a peace of mind is that all of these people have passed a background check, and then they
Yeah.
also require you to pass a background check. But like I said, there's reviews, which I really like, and past travelers will comment on it too, like if you're kind of like unsure about the place. About areas, I always research the area, because you don't necessarily have to live in the place that you work. So sometimes we'll live a little further if it's like more
Uh-huh.
affordable, or if it seems like sketchy. But I also don't sign contracts where like in sketchy areas.
Yeah.
So that's also something to keep in mind when you are looking at jobs too, because the higher paying jobs sometimes are in like relatively unsafe areas, but that really like need the care. So that's like something to consider, I guess, if you are worried about your safety as a traveler, especially if you're doing it alone, because there's a lot of solo travelers out there as well.
Yes, true. All right, next
That-
question. Are employers providing stipends or covering room and board expenses? So for internal, you just get the stipend and you do what you want with it. So the stipend is for everything, like rent, whatever costs, living costs. My company gives the stipend every single month. So it's just another payment, an extra payment that month. I get the question a lot of like, do they provide housing? No. Like I find it on my own through Furnish Finder, and then they just pay me the amount per month, and then I use that for rent. And like, I always have more money left over after rent, so I just use that for like gas, groceries, whatever,
Yes. When they say like in your contract, like in my contract, they'll say like they provide this much for housing. That doesn't mean you have to spend all that money on your
No.
housing, and it doesn't mean you lose the housing stipend if the rest of it you don't use. You can use it however you want. That's just how much is allotted in that state, like up to a certain amount for you as a traveler.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you will not qualify for the housing stipend too if you don't have a permanent tax home. If you are not duplicating expenses, like if you're not paying rent back home, you do not qualify for those stipends.
Yeah, that's a good point because I don't think many people talk about that, and not many people know that. Like, I don't think anyone told me that.
No.
And I think I learned it from you. And remind me, how did you learn that again? Did a
So
recruiter
there's
tell you that?
I forgot the name of her company, but her name is Nermina something. If you look up travel tax
Oh,
also has
this
it's
CPA?
yeah, there's CPA, they're
Okay.
accountants, and they have like 30-minute, it's like maybe 40 or $50 tax home consultations. And I highly, highly, highly recommend everybody does that, honestly, to know that you are following the rules of the IRS and you are, informed of what it means to have a tax home. Because if you don't have a tax home, then you don't qualify for the stipend, like I said. And this is a tax-free stipend, so you want to make sure that you're following the rules.
Yes.
So.
And there's, some ways that you can make it a little more affordable, if you know what I mean. But
Yeah,
if you
yeah. You have to know the
contact
rules.
us,
Yeah.
yes, if you contact us, we'll give you some top secret info on that.
Yes. Okay, so next question, and this is like my favorite question, honestly. We talked about a little bit of this in our episode with Dr. Odell Miller. So if you guys, that was such a good episode, so you guys
It
should listen
was.
to it. This person said, I am a new grad. Am I still able to travel? Do you have to have any specific amount of experience for certain settings? How's the onboarding process? Okay, so I'll just talk from my experience first. Usually outpatient, like orthopedics, neuro doesn't need experience. There are certain jobs like acute care does require 1 or 2 years of experience sometimes.
Really?
Yes. Because
Huh.
imagine like going out on your own and like not knowing the hospital or like, I don't know. But anyways,
For
they
PT
usually
specifically?
for PT specifically, yes. They usually require experience unless they're really, really desperate. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't apply to that job. Usually they don't count your clinicals as experience either.
PT, like occupational therapy, physical therapy, and then the assistants. I feel like you can group all that together. So I feel like it's a
SLP,
very
I'm not sure
similar.
about.
Yeah, SLP, I'm not sure about that. But and then nursing, they changed it so you had to have like a year experience before going to travel. But I think with nursing, like since COVID happened, there was definitely, I think it just depends on the contract and the place.
Mhm.
I did hear that a lot of them do have a bit of a requirement, but
Yeah.
again, if you
Which
have
makes
connections and
sense.
stuff, you never know. Yeah.
Yeah, you never know, and it depends, like I said, how much they need you
Yeah.
to. Some
Yeah.
places might be willing to take, like, maybe rural places might be willing to take,
Yeah.
someone with less experience, but that's just what I've seen as a PT in the therapy world is, like, the hospitals usually require you to have a little bit of experience,
Mm.
but it's like, how are we supposed to
With
get it if we traveled right
yeah.
outside of school?
With internal, you don't. You can be a new grad and go to inpatient or acute.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. So I guess
Yeah,
it just depends on the company too.
depends on the company,
But
depends on the
you
hospital
definitely
policies.
can as a new grad. Like,
Yes,
it's not a
we
no.
both
Yeah.
did. Yeah, we both
Yes.
did.
Straight out of school.
And honestly, we've said this so many times before. I feel like I've learned so much more
Yes, I
because I
agree.
went to so many different clinics. Like right
Yeah.
now, I use BFR regularly. I have access to an Alter G treadmill, which I like never would have
Oh,
had.
those are so
It's
nice.
so cool. I'm
Oh my
obsessed.
gosh. I've only
And
seen it
like
in one clinic.
yeah, it's like the coolest thing ever. And we have like
Yeah.
access to different equipment, different knowledge, different
Yeah.
providers. And I think it's just making me a much more well-rounded person and like
Yeah.
therapist
Totally.
and clinician. And I completely see the side that like, oh, you don't have a mentor, but you'll have multiple different mentors at multiple different places. You'll have exposure to like so many different patient populations and stuff that you would never have seen if you stayed at the same spot, you know? So I like disagree in the fact that people say that you won't have mentorship as a new
I
grad,
agree.
especially if they know you're a new grad. Like I'm working right now with a new grad traveler, and I've seen how much they have helped her. And like my boss even has been like going out of her way to just sit down with her and show her how to use eSTEM, you know? And they really know you're a new grad and they don't want you to fail because that will look bad on them and that'll look bad for patients. So don't worry about being a new grad. I think it's a great experience to have. And, you know, just do it. We both did it and we survived and we're like better because of it, I think.
Yeah, no, I fully think like new grads should 100% do travel. It is such a great experience. It opens you up to so many things. You meet so many people and you start building connections like that because you're always meeting new people. So if you have the ability and that personality and willingness to like be changing environments like that, do it as a new grad.
And even I wasn't like that, you know, I was not someone that liked change. I was not someone that liked the idea of changing documentation systems like every couple months.
Yeah.
But honestly, like you learn to just be so adaptive and now I love change and I like wouldn't have had all these amazing experiences if I hadn't done it. And like at first I was like, okay, I'm probably going to travel like a year and then get it out of my system. Now I'm like almost 2 years in and I'm like, wow, like there's just so much left to do and so much left to explore. Like you might be thinking like, okay, like I could just travel to these places for a week and like, you know, get the same experience. No,
No.
not at all.
Nope.
Like living somewhere versus like going on vacation is completely different.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, I'm just like trialing and erroring different cities that I want to potentially live in. Like that is
Yeah.
one of the main reasons why I want to do travel. So it's like, you know,
Yeah.
might as well see.
I'm obsessed with the Pacific Northwest. Like seriously,
Yeah,
it
you
is
love the West
amazing.
Coast.
Yeah, I
I'm
love
like
the West Coast.
South cities is my vibe.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, and like I would have never known this. I thought I was like a Chicago like city
Yeah,
girl.
me
And now
too.
looking back at Chicago, like you know, everyone's like summertime shy is like amazing. And I'm like,
Yeah,
yes, but summertime anywhere is amazing. Like,
that's
have you
fair.
been to the summer in like the Pacific Northwest? Like, holy crap, Chicago has had like literally nothing on it. So it's like
Funny.
insane because you just get to explore these new places and it's like a totally different level of like
Yeah,
travel and like
yeah.
vacationing.
We're very opposites that way because I am very much a diehard Chicago person. And every city I go to, I'm like, this is not like Chicago though. Chicago's
Yeah.
better.
Well, no, Seattle,
It
like
can't compare.
honestly, yeah, no, Seattle does not compare to Chicago, but I think Washington completely like throws Chicago out the window. It's, yeah, I still love Chicago, but I don't know if
It's
I'm
different.
gonna
It's different.
settle
Yeah.
down there to be honest.
Yeah. All right, last question. I thought this question was really funny because it's like travel PT is a mystery. But
Yes.
this person asked, can you explain how exactly you do travel PT? Like what your day-to-day looks like? Do you sign 2-month or 2-year contracts? Can you stay local and just be switching clinics? Yes, I think to almost everything. In terms of day-to-day, for the most part, you are going to be at one location, one clinic for at minimum 3 months. I don't think I've
Mhm.
seen any contract that's less than 3 months.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, minimum is 3 months, and
Non-existent.
then, like we've talked about, you can extend and go into that, like, mentality of the interview, like, "Are there opportunities to extend if I want to?" I personally like asking that as well, especially when I first go to a new state. I'm like, "Will there be opportunities to extend?" Because I don't always love just going to one state for 3 months and then hopping to the next state. Like, I
Mhm.
like to kinda drag it out, stay a little longer, so I like when I have the opportunity to extend. For example, I have been in Florida now. It will be a year
Mhm.
in
It's crazy.
May. Yeah, and my next contract is in Florida, so I'll be here through August. So I'll be in Florida for over a year. But I've been at different clinics. So this is my third contract in Florida. Sometimes, like with internal, you can't stay at the same clinic for more than 3-4 months, but you can go to another clinic in that area. Technically, it kind of is local. Like I have a friend that's done travel in Georgia for like a year and a half, 2 years, but he went to different clinics in Georgia. Like I said, 3-4 month contracts in each clinic. So it just depends. I've also heard there are local jobs like for nursing and like local travel jobs, but you have to have a certain mileage away from your permanent residence. That is the biggest thing for it to count as travel. So like, yes, it could be local, but you still might be at 2 hours from your permanent home. You know what I mean? Since I'm with the same company, this is definitely different, a big difference. So in my region, my company has like there's the clinic managers and there's the manager of the clinics of that region. And I've been pulled from my clinic a couple days if they needed me to help out a different clinic for like someone's out on PTO or something like that. So like I was pulled to go to a different clinic for 3 days during my contract, but it's just a couple of days at another clinic in the area.
Yeah.
But that's different with internal. They can do that because it's the same company.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I would not want to do that, but I don't think that would happen. But
Yeah.
I was going to say too, just one thing to remember is like, according to the IRS, if you live at a place for the same place for longer than like a year, that becomes or work at the same place for longer than a year, that becomes your new permanent tax home. And then you don't qualify for those tax-free stipends. So that's the only thing. That's why you can't work at the same place for like a year or live at the same place for years, because they consider that as like your new permanent home. But yeah, I don't see contracts less than 3 months. Honestly, most places don't even want you to stay like only 3 months, because honestly, it takes like at least a month to like get into the swing of things and like build up your caseload. So I agree. I also try to always extend my contracts at least even to 4 months, because 3 months goes by in the snap of a finger.
So
Like
fast.
it's so quick. I've already been at this contract for like almost 3 months, which is like wild.
Yeah.
And I'm not ready to go yet, but I kind of am, because I'm excited for California. Yeah, day to day, it's literally like a normal PT life. Like it's not any different. Except that you're in a new place and you get to explore. Like on weekends, you're not just like, okay, like I'm in the same state that I grew up my whole life, like we do so much on the weekends because you're just a traveler, and there's a lot of other travelers in Washington, at least. And so I've gotten really close to them, and we like are constantly like, who wants to go here? Who wants to go on a hike? Who wants to go to Seattle to go see the cherry blossom trees right now? Me, so like, it's just nice to have other travelers around too, because they're all friendly, and I feel like we're all like the same, where we just want to do stuff. And, perms, I feel like don't always permanent people they're like, I grew up here and like, this is not exciting to me anymore. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like Mount Rainier. So yeah, it's fun. The week to week life is like really fun, but day to day, like if you're just talking about a work day, is like not any different than, a regular therapist. That kind of wraps up our questions for today. There's honestly so much I feel like we could talk about in terms of travel jobs, healthcare, whatever it is, you name it. If you still have more questions or are interested in travel jobs, but don't have either reliable recruiters or just the resources, fill out our form and we will contact you and connect you with our favorite recruiter that we think is best for you based off of your answers. You can find our form in the episode notes on our Instagram and our TikTok page, and we will help you get started if this is something that you think sounds great to you. Yeah, that kind of wraps up this episode, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.